Hi guys. So in this video, we want to talk about the new pyRevit package, which is called, I'm sorry, the extension, which is called the packages and tags. Let's start a new model and talk about pyRevit tags in this video exclusively. Uh, so as if you watched the previous video about the pyRevit 4.6.5 update, I've mentioned a few things about it. I'm going to talk about these pyRevit tags in detail. So we won't talk about the managed packages in this video. Everything we talk about is basically the managed tag system. If you don't know how to get these tools, watch the previous video. It's basically a new extension called pyRevit tags that's available in your extension. You can activate it, and it adds this whole panel just before modify to a pyRevit tab. So we talked about in the previous video, we talked about having two different organization systems, whether you want to add multiple different parameters to an element, or you want to have a single parameter to an element and list the different groupings that element is part of, or you can have basically a parameter for each one of the groups and sets it a true and false value. pyRevit tags obviously follows this organization system with having one parameter and a series of tags that element belongs to. The name of the parameter, go and into project parameters and define a parameter that's called doctag. That is the parameter that basically is available for tagging. And I would basically mark all the elements that is available in the model so you can tag everything. And then go into the type of the parameter should be text. You can group it wherever you want to. Makes kind of more sense to put it under data. And then you get to decide the values are long per group or by group instance. So that's that. And then let's say you want to keep it default, and you create that project parameter in your project. If you don't have that project parameter when you launch these tools, it'll tell you that the tag system is not configured. So make sure to do that. I'll put more details into this and allow this configuration in the packages and tags configurations tools that's coming in the future. So just for now, just to get it started, or if you already have a system like this, you might want to just rename that parameter. So basically, we're ready to tag stuff in Revit. Now let's create some elements. Let's create a series of elements here. Just draw a bunch of walls. Go through 3D view. Let's adjust the height of these so they're visually separate from each other. Okay, so let's say I have these different sets of elements, and I want to tag these differently. For example, let's say I want to, well, the specific use case for this tool set is what I learned in the past year working with engineers, that they generally, especially in North America, they work in different sort of like scopes of work. So let's say I don't know, I don't have a specific engineering models for this, but imagine this is a I don't know, set of ductwork or electrical equipment or plumbing equipment and stuff like that that you are creating. Let's say this. All these walls are going to get constructed in the first scope, and these set of walls are going to get constructed in a different scope, and same thing with these. So they're going to be 3 different scopes of work for you guys. Generally, how the engineers work is that they create a scope of work for this, they build all these models, make it, get it tested and stuff like that. They issue a set of drawings that shows this scope of work, and then they issue that package to the contractors. They start building it, and while they're doing this, the engineers are working on a different scope of work for different basically different things to be constructed. But there's basically no limit in how you can use these tools. I'm just saying that this is one of the use cases, one of the very good use cases for these tools. So let's say I want to tag these based on the scope of work. I want to go and tag selected. This is what you have to have set of selected elements, and it tells you how many elements you have selected, and then you type in the tag that you want to type it in. Let's say this is scope 1 for the first scope of work. And I can say, if you say replace tags, it replaces all the tags on those set of elements. If you say append tags, it adds this tag to those to the existing tags on that element. So an element could be tagged, could have multiple tags basically, just like any other. I don't know, you have seen it on social media posts or Instagram posts and stuff like that. You can add multiple tags to a single element. So I'll append tag, and you can see that doc tag parameter now says scope 1 on these elements. Obviously, if I select these elements, the doc tag doesn't say anything. They don't belong to that group. So that's basically how you tag stuff. So I'm gonna go here and say let's tag these. Well, actually, let's tag these only. So I can show you something else later also. I'm going to select these three elements and I'm going to tag them. And it remembers the last tag that you have applied. I'm going to say that these are tag 2 and then tag this selected with tag 3. So I have three different sets of elements tagged differently. I'm also going to go select a series of elements from these different areas, and I'm going to apply a tag to like a miscellaneous tag, for example. I'm going to append it because they already have an existing tag, so I'm just going to append it. And if I click any of these elements, you can see that there's a miscellaneous tag and there's a scope 1 tag that have been applied to that element. So now I have all these element tags tagged in this model with different scopes of work, let's say, or any other use case that you have for different elements. Obviously, the parameter applies to everything, so you can tag as many elements as you want, as many different types of elements. You can even tag sheets if you need to, or views if you need to, using this system. And then you go to manage tags, and it basically pulls all the tags. It reads all the elements in your model, grabs all the tags from those elements, and it shows you that these tags are available inside the model that you have. And I can say, okay, so there's a couple of functions that are related to tags and tag modifiers. We'll talk about these modifiers later. But basically, there's a series of options that are available for managing tags. Selecting the tagged element is one of them. So if I have a bunch of elements select basically tag, I can just select the tag and select those elements by their tag, which is a great way of doing this. And then you can rename a tag. Let's say we want to rename that scope 1 to scope, well, actually, let's say I have tagged these scope 6. Let's say I have tagged these separately. I'm going to go to manage, and then this should be scope 4, so I'm going to rename that to scope 4. So now that scope is a scope 4. You can delete a tag. This removes the tag from your model. It doesn't remove the elements that are tagged. So just to be clear, it says does not delete the elements in the tooltip. If you have a bunch of elements selected, and then you manage tags, it tells you that you're managing the tags on those two selected elements only. You're not seeing everything that's in your model. You're saying you're basically managing it for the two selected elements. So the tool basically works on both selected elements and everything in your model. Everything in your model is 11 elements right now that I have, but you could have literally thousands of different elements in your model. So that's basically that for the tags. And then it gives you three different create options for creating different things. Because this parameter has this tag basically has a value inside a parameter, we can filter elements for this value. So one of the things that the tags can do is that it can create tag filters for you. So I'm going to go click on the scope 3, and I can ask the tool to create tag filters for me. And if I go into the filters, now I can see that there are two filters that basically says all elements tagged with that scope and all the elements that are not tagged with that scope. So it creates inclusion and exclusion filters for that tag. The use case is that, let's say I want to go in this view and I want to say filters, mark everything that is being tagged, all the tags that are tagged as scope 3, apply solid pattern to them with a specific color. So in this view, I can say all the elements that are belonging to that group are basically colored differently in my 3D view. You can specify different. There's no limitation to what you can do with these. You can specify very different visualization systems profile for these tag elements, and the filters are live. So if I go and say I want to add this tag, the last tag, I think it was tag 3 that we used, to this element, I'm going to say tag 3 and append it. Obviously, that element gets colored differently because the filter is smart, and that element has also that value. You can also use the match tags tool. So if you want to match all the tags between different elements, you can just click on that and then click one element and click on the other one. I'm going to click on these two, and these two elements will exactly reflect the tags that the source elements had. So if they belong to any different tags and whatnot, they will be obviously be overridden. Or you can clear the tags on a set of elements. You can say pyRevit clear tags, and it tells you, are you sure you want to delete it on these selected elements? And say yes, and it clears up that value on all these selected elements that you have. So that's a great way to create different filters and basically visualize and group and elements differently. One of the things that you can do is that you can create a 3D a tag 3D view. So if I want to see all these elements in scope 3, I can go and manage tags and select the scope and say create a 3D view for me for that tag. So it creates a new 3D view for you. It's called tag view scope 3, which is the name of your tag. And if you go under visibility graphics of this view, you can say on the filters, it has added the exclusion filter, and it's basically turned off the visibility for all the elements that do not belong to that to this tag. So you can see all these tagged elements only. So if this is the scope of work that you have, you can easily create a 3D view for that scope of work and export this view to a different format, specifically if you're using Autodesk Navisworks to basically coordinate your work with the contractors and everybody else. So you can export this into an NWC file and send it to whoever that's coordinating the project. They can load it up and they see all these elements that belong to that various scope. So that's also a very good way of doing it. I'm going to go and create a new schedule to show you what the next feature is. I'm going to go create, because I have walls, I'm going to go create a wall schedule, and I'm going to say, let's say, I don't know, list the volumes of the walls and the width of the walls, and I don't know, the area of the wall, some properties on these walls, and also list the doc tag. So it'll basically show me all the walls in this model, and it shows me the doc tag variable as well. I'm just going to actually remove this just so you added it just so you can see. So all the walls are in this listed in this model. Now, one of the things that you can use the manage tags for is if I have, let's say, scope 3, I can create tag schedules. So when I click on the tag schedule, the tool looks at your model and basically collects a list of categories of elements that are already tagged in that element. So if I had like HVAC equipment and electrical equipment and ducts and stuff like that tagged, you would see a list of them here. Right now I only have walls tagged. So basically just lists the just the walls category for me. And when I select that category, it looks into all the schedules that are inside your model and say, okay, what schedule do you want to use as a template for the new tag schedule? And I've already created a schedule for wall, so I'm going to use that as the template. This is great because you can organize the template schedule and format it in any way you want and add the parameters that you want and stuff like that. What this tool does is basically duplicates that schedule and filters the content for that the number of elements that you have. So I'm going to create select schedule, and it creates a new schedule for me, scope 3. It lists the categories of the schedules that's basically filtering, and it adds a filter. It adds the parameter, the doc tag parameter, to the schedule. Remember, we deleted that. It adds it there, and it also filters on the all the elements based on that doc tag, whether they belong to that scope 3 or not. So that's also gives you a very good way of scheduling all the content that you have inside the scope of work or inside a tag in general. So these are basically all the features that are available in managing the tags themselves. Now, the filtering system in Revit 2018, up to Revit 2018, allows you to create 3 different rules for different filters, basically different parameters. In Revit 2019, that limitation has been removed, and it's allows more. I haven't really looked into it right now to see if I can expand this or not, but basically the Manager's Tag tool will allow you to select more than 1 tag, up to 3. If I select anything more, it disables these features, but you can select up to 3 tags and create tag filters for those 3 tags or a tag 3D view. So let's say I want to say scope 3 and a scope 1, and I want to create the 3D view for that, for those elements. So basically it lists all the elements that are not part of the scope 3. It hides basically all the elements that are not part of the scope 3 and not part of the scope 1. And if you notice, it has added a custom filter for this feature that basically is ruling out anything that does not include these 2 in its tag values. So kind of be smart about like the values that you're creating, just knowing that this is how they're going to be filtered. You can also go in and say, you want all the, like scope 3 and 4, I want just the tag filters, and I want to deal with these tag filters myself. So if I go into filters, I can see that the inclusion and exclusion tags filters basically are created for those 2 sets of tags. So I can go here in my view and I can say anything, remove this, anything that is basically, actually this is the 3 view that we created for a different purpose. let's go here, filters, remove the existing one, and add the scope 2 and 3, and I want to apply a pattern to these elements. So anything that is tagged in scope 2 and scope 4, show me what they are. Apparently we don't have anything in here, so I'm gonna go manage tags, select everything that's in scope 2. Oh, it's just that. Let's try selecting anything in scope 4, select tag elements. Okay, let's tag this element with scope 2 as well. So now it could get colored, and we can also match these tags on different elements, and they would also get colored differently because they belong into those two groups now. So I'm going to delete these two custom 3D views that we created, assuming that, for example, we exported them. So I'm going to say 2 and 3, create a 3D view, and I can see those elements only in this 3D view. So that's basically how the tagging system works. One of the great use cases for this set of tools, as I mentioned, is scopes of work for engineers. You can name these tags in any way you want. You can include your scope of work number or whatever, however you want to tag these elements. Now, there's another layer of tagging available to you guys. Right now, it's sort of like has a fixed set of tags, modifiers, which is basically that extra layer is the tag modifiers. Right now it only has a set of fixed modifiers, but I'm gonna add the configuration in the future so you can add more modifiers to your tags as well. So what is a tag modifier? A tag modifier modifies or sets the state of a tag. Assuming that, for example, it provides more support for the use case of this managed tag system if you want to use it for managing your scopes of work. So I can select, let's say, scope 2 was the second scope of work. Let's go and actually create. Let's go and remove this, and let's go and create a filter for scope 2, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to add the scope 2 filters to my model, and show them differently, just for us to see what elements are part of scope 2. These are, I'm going to match and add a bunch of other stuff to this tag also, and I'm going to clear the tags on these elements, so I know these elements are part of scope 2 as well. Now, obviously, you see that scope 3 doesn't exist anymore because we overrode it with the different values that we matched. So that scope doesn't exist in the model anymore just because we replaced it. So it's a great way. If you want to delete a tag, that's one way of doing it. You can just remove the value from the model. I would highly advise not messing with these values. The tool is very specific on how this values needs to be formatted, so don't mess it up. But obviously, after a while, you'll learn how this formatting works, and you can make modifications in there as well. So let's talk about the tag modifiers. Let's say this is the scope of work number 2 that we created, and I want to issue this. I want to publish this scope of work as a 3D view to my contractor. And what I want to tell them is that basically I want to tell them, actually what I want to do is that I want to issue this whole model to the contractors, but I want to first of all give them two different pieces of information. First of all, I want to tell them the scope that these elements belong to. For the sake of simplicity, I'm going to select all these elements and just type scope 2 here. You don't do that, but I know how the formatting works, so let's just do that. So there's only one scope in our model right now. Let's say I want to issue this model to them, and there are two pieces of information that I want to let them know. One is what scope of work these elements belong to, which we have already included in the doc tag. So when you're exporting your model, for example, if you're using Autodesk Navisworks, when you're exporting your model, you can include all the parameters on each of the elements. And inside the Navisworks, you can create appearance profilers basically that read the value of these parameters, and based on that, they will color the elements differently. So you can, your contractor or your coordinator can create an appearance profiler for that scope of work, and he could color those elements in the Navisworks very clearly to see what elements belong to this new scope of work. Now, to support this system more, there are modifiers. So you can apply a modifier to a tag. You can apply an issued for review, as built, issued for construction, not in contract, verify in field, and issued for fabrication right now. There are a couple of different modifiers. Let me know if you need anything urgently, and I can add it pretty easily to this list. But basically, this list in the future will be customizable, so you can customize and add your own modifiers as well. The modifier will allow me to tag, basically apply a modifier to that specific scope of work with that tag, to basically apply a status for that tag. I want to say, let's say this scope 2 is a set of ductwork, and I want to say this ductwork is issued for fabrication. And I'm going to apply that, and when I open this, I can see in front of the scope that says the modifier is applied for issued for fabrication. If I go and check out the values, you can see that in front of the name of that tag, there is /IFF, which means that that tag has been modified with that modifier. So in Navisworks, all these values could be filtered. Like your coordinator can mark all the issued for fabrication versus new content, or issued for construction versus new content, or as built versus all the other basically content separately from each other, and could color code everything inside Navisworks very easily. So this system, the combination of the tags and the modifiers, will give you a great system to organize the content that you have in your Revit models to different scopes of work without any serious modifications to how Revit works, and also tag them based on their phase or their status. You can show that this content that I've created are issued for fabrication. I've issued the drawings. There won't be any more changes to this. Or I can remove the modifier IFF from this and apply another modifier as IFC issued for construction, let's say. And then you can see that that's been marked with issued for construction. There's also no limitation in how many modifiers you can apply to it. I can say issued for construction. I don't know, issued for, it doesn't really make sense maybe. I'm going to apply 2 different modifiers to this scope. So you can see that scope 2 is IFF and VIF. So if I select on this, you can see scope 2, IFF, VIF. You can still apply all the other tags to the tools, to these elements. So I can say scope 3, and I'm going to append a tag to that one. And you can see that, they separated between these two. So that tag, its modifiers, and the tag and the modifiers that are going to be applied to the new tag. But basically, all these basically the tag and the modifiers have a representation in that parameter value, so these could be filtered completely separately. So now you can apply, obviously, as you saw, you can apply in modifiers, and you can also create the modifier filter. So it creates all different filters for different types of modifiers that are available in using this tool. So if I go to my filters, then you can see I have exclusion and inclusion filters for all the different modifiers that I have, and it checks the existence of that value. So now I can go inside my view and remove this and say, show me anything that's issued for construction, and mark them as red. So anything that's issued for construction, I can very easily see. That's all your staff, your engineers that are working in the model, they can see what's been issued for construction as long as they have that filter applied to it. Or maybe you want to export this separately. So you can just set up a 3D view, duplicate a different 3D view, apply that filter to it, and basically an exclusion filter for IFC, hide everything that doesn't belong to the IFC modifier, and apply there. You could argue that it can apply, you can use the same system by applying 2 different tags. Like if I didn't have this modifier to it, I can just remove these modifiers from this, and I can say manage tags. Well, actually I can say like these, let's say these are, I want to modify, say that these are IFC. I can just tag them as IFC, issued for construction, and I can just append a tag to them. So when I see here, I can see the IFC is there. The only argument that I have against this is that you don't see which scope of work is being tagged. So it's nice to see, it's nice to use a sort of like a secondary level modifying system for those tags. So they're color coded differently, and it's very visual and much nicer than tagging these contents separately with different modifiers. Obviously, this does not make any sense being as-built and issued for construction, but you get the point. So you can add as many modifiers as you want to this system. This is pretty much everything about the tags tool. This tool will be completed in the future. You'll be able to export the content, all the elements that belong to a certain tag to a separate Revit file. when you click on this export tool, it's going to ask you for a template, a Revit template model that you generally want to use for exporting content. Maybe you want to send this content to somebody else, so it will include it in their Revit models and whatnot, or with LinkedIn and stuff like that. So you can just use, when you click on this, it'll ask you to select a template. You select your template, and it would copy and paste all that content inside your new model, and you can save it as a separate model. So that'll come in the future. The configuration will come in the future, and I'll add a system to add more modifiers. Right now, I'm trying to inspect, basically see how you guys will use these in the um, in the actual work environment, and what other modifiers you might want to have. I am a huge proponent of convention over configuration. As you can see about everything in pyRevit, you don't have to configure pyRevit really to do anything, as long as, for example, if you want to add a tool, as long as you follow the convention, the pyRevit understands where the tool is, and it would create everything for you. One of the things that I sort of like started doing in this is that I could add a configuration so you could pick any parameter to do the task for you. But the nice thing about it is that as you adopt these tools and work with other companies, this parameter will always remain the same. So if you get a different model from a different, I don't know, if you're working with 10 different contractors and they're all using the pyRevit tools to tag their content, when you bring all their content to the Navisworks, you don't really have to manage a set of different parameters and stuff like that. They all follow the same parameter number. Or you can easily say, whatever parameter that has doc tag in its name, filter based on that. So the same thing applies to the modifiers. I'm trying to keep this list very controlled and limited. So that's why, I'm saying that the adding the new modifier feature will come in the future. So let me know if you need more modifiers, and send me basically its name and its description, and I'll add it to and any specific color that you care about, and I'll add it to the list. But basically that will come in the future, and you can create your own modifiers as well. The tool is smart about the modifiers that apply to the scope. So if you apply, you don't see the IFC and as built in here. Same thing with remove, you don't see it, everything else in there. I sincerely believe in this system, and I really think that, especially that people work with various different scopes of work in their models, and I don't know whether you're engineers or architects or whoever that's using Revit, and you deal with different scopes of work, and you need to coordinate this project in a fast track system, going really fast going forward, and you want to make sure that the people that are using your model understand what has been issued, for construction, what has been issued for fabrication, what is under review, what the scope of work that does that element belong to. All this information, you can tag these basically elements separately and apply different modifiers to it. I sincerely believe in this system, and I've used it in the previous companies that I worked for. And in my humble opinion, it works really well. It's a very simple system. You are not technically really tied to these tools. They don't add any proprietary way of doing stuff. You could technically select these elements and modify these values as you wish. The formatting is fairly simple. There is a tag, space, the modifiers, a comma, and the rest of the tags. And it's their own modifiers and whatnot. So if I have this element and I want to apply another tag to it, oh, this mouse dies sometimes, tag 2, I'm going to append it to it, and I'm going to under manage, and I'm going to say tag 2 and apply a modifier to this one as well. When I click on this element, the formatting is very simple. You can see that it says tag 2 / modifier, comma, tag, the other tag, and its modifiers. So the formatting is fairly simple. You're not really tied to this set of tools. I'm trying to show everybody that this is a really good way of managing the content, and also give you a really good tool set to manage this parameters for yourself. So I hope you use it, and I hope you find great value in this, and let me know if you want more modifiers or more features belonging to that system. In the next video, we'll talk about managing tags, which is managing packages, which is generally for managing the drawing sheets in different packages of the project.